Hello, everyone. Hi, and welcome to another Biometric Update event. We're talking about biometrics and digital identity. I am your host, Chris Burt. We are still welcoming people onto the calls. Thank you for joining us. But we are also going to race ahead at a breakneck pace today because we have a lot to talk about. That's because today we're talking about age assurance, and in particular, those specifically approved or recognized methods that are potentially effective for meeting the UK's new regulations for online safety. Before we get to the discussion, the presentation is being recorded. It will be shared with all of you following the event in an email, so you can watch it again at your leisure. We will also proceed to a Q&A at the end, so I would encourage all of you to submit your questions as they occur to you, as they come up in conversation at any time using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We have a whole team of knowledgeable presenters and panelists with us today, representing many leading technology providers in the age assurance space and influential organizations. So I will introduce our presenters and panelists as we go along to save time, starting with Alan Goode, principal and founder of Goode Intelligence, of course, leading biometrics and digital identity market analyst and consultancy in the world. And Alan is going to start us off by giving some of the context, what these regulations are and what the marketplace is shaping up to be. So hello, and thank you for joining us, Alan.
Thanks, Chris. Give me a couple of moments to get to my screen shared. I've got a very couple of simple slides, but just bear with me. 2 ticks. Here we go.
Hi. And so you can listen, put it on the speaker.
Oh, Mr. Corby's arrived. Yeah, so thank you, everybody. My name's Alan Goode. I'm CEO and Chief Analyst at Goode Intelligence. We're a digital trust analyst and consulting firm. And in the past, we've done work for Ofcom, so and we understand the importance of language with regulation. So what I've attempted to do is to be very careful with getting the right lexicon here, because it's very, very important. So I've been, as you can see, I've been creating amazing graphics for this presentation. So I'd like to spend a couple of minutes providing some context to this webinar and a brief overview of the UK's Online Safety Act and what it means for age verification, age assurance. I think really it's imperative that we move away from weak age verification mechanisms. I've got 2 teenage children, and I trust them to make the right decisions in what they view online. They even come to me when something doesn't seem right. As my son is a big gamer, that's kind of perhaps some conversation he's having in Discord or something he's seen in an online chat. But I trust them. Some children do not have that environment in which to make the right decisions and to speak to a parent or guardian about something that doesn't seem right. And they need protecting. So self-certification mechanisms really are simply not sufficient enough to prevent children from signing up to age inappropriate. A simple yes, I'm over the age of 18 is not adequate. Some digital companies where age verification is required have made the right decision and already started to deploy more robust age verification mechanisms, but they are in the minority. So with that in that context, I would say self-regulation has largely failed here. So it is the responsibility of governments to step in and implement legislation that forces companies to implement robust age verification mechanisms. In the UK, this is largely the remit of the Online Safety Act, OSA. So the OSA passed into law October 26, 2023, and is a comprehensive set of regulations designed to protect children and adults online. It imposes new duties on online companies to ensure user safety on their platforms. The Act requires platforms to prevent children from accessing harmful and age-inappropriate content. UK regulator Ofcom is the main regulator for OSA. And Ofcom has set out detailed guidance on age verification to protect children from encountering harmful content online. Ofcom recommends using age verification, age estimation, or a combination of both. These methods must be highly effective at correctly determining whether a user is a child. Platforms that allow pornography or other harmful content must introduce age checks by July 2025 at the latest. These measures are designed to provide strong protection to children while ensuring that privacy rights are safeguarded and adults can still access legal content. In January of this year, Ofcom published industry guidance on effective age checks that included definition of what robust and highly effective age assurance is. If you haven't already done so, I would recommend checking out Ofcom's guidance and other statements related to the OSA and age assurance yourselves. In summary, Ofcom lists the kinds of age assurance that are capable of being highly effective, and they are open banking, photo identification, ID matching, facial age estimation of FAE, mobile network operator age checks, credit card checks, email-based age estimation, and digital identity checks. It also states that self-certification of age is not capable of being highly effective. To help you understand what these highly effective solutions look like and whether they are fit for your organization's age assurance needs, and to ensure compliance with OSA, we have lined up a number of suppliers that over the course of this webinar will educate and inform you. Also, Good Intelligence and Biometric Update have also teamed up to create a market and buyer's guide for UK biometric age verification that will be available shortly, and is the second report title in our partnership. The first is Face Liveness Detection Market and Buyer's Guide that was published yesterday. Thank you. Chris, back to you.
Fantastic summary, Alan. Thank you for getting us started. And thank you also for mentioning our work together in this area. So before we turn to those technology providers to see what the different options are available to us now on the market, I'd like to bring in Ian Corby, the Executive Director of the Age Verification Providers Association. You'll often hear referred to as AVPA. And as ED for the AVPA, Ian represents a lot of the companies in this space, including those on this call, all the people providing the technology, the policy know-how, et cetera, to make this stuff work. So Ian, thank you for joining us. And yeah, can you get us a little further in terms of how the regulation in the UK it fits into global trends on this issue?
Thank you, Chris. I hope you can hear me. I'm actually here down in Australia right now. I'm in Canberra, having been in Melbourne and Sydney and about to go to Brisbane, but there's a massive cyclone there, so we've had to delay that. Age verification, or age assurance, as I think is the more technical term if we work from the ISO standard, it's just taking off around the world, right? It's everywhere. And the AVPA, our trade association, it's a really small trade association. We are now trying to deal with legislation in 50 US states, in Canada, in India, in Singapore, here in Australia. This is just booming right now. This is such a big issue. And there are some really fundamental questions about how we should do it. And there's a big argument going on between lots of the big tech platforms. So do those who run app stores want to take on the responsibility of becoming the ultimate identifier of your age on the internet? So Apple and Google are not that keen on doing that job. But we saw just last week Apple offering an API where we give some information to the apps who are within their app store about the age of their user. But these are ages set by parents. right? They are not independently assured ages. And what Apple was really clear about was where there are some sort of legal requirements about age, we're not helping with that. That's for something else to do. That should stick with the platform. So, but Meta and Snap and others are still arguing that those sort of legal responsibilities should sit with the app stores. So it's hugely controversial, actually. And we're sitting in the middle of this, big argument between lots of big tech. So let's just boil it down to what's happening in a few jurisdictions. In the US, we have multiple pieces of legislation going through 50 states. Some are about pornography, some are about app store accountability, some use the Texas law, which is already being litigated up to the Supreme Court. We're waiting for the result of that in June. Some use a more modern approach from the Ethics and Public Policy Center, where we're not just tackling pure porn sites, but we're tackling any porn wherever it is found. It'd be interesting to see how that pans out. And then in the EU, the original idea was we'd use the UD wallet. And then somebody said, well, hang on, the UD wallet is not anonymous. So we can't use that for pornography. It won't fulfill the requirements of the French regulator, the Spanish regulator, the Italian regulator. So we're now developing an interim app in the EU to try and find an anonymous way of doing that. And then I'm here in Australia right now. We're doing this massive trial about age assurance technology, which I do recommend everybody watching this looks to in June when it's published to understand the pros and cons of all the different systems. So look, I mean, 2025 is just the year of age assurance. And I cannot possibly in this short period of time explain to everybody what's going on, but watch this space because it's moving fast. Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. And I just want to suggest or get your opinion, Ian, before we move on. Is it fair to say that what's happening in the UK, and in particular with this guidance on potentially highly effective methods, that this is proving influential as all of these other jurisdictions follow along?
Well, I mean, I think we're dealing with the challenges which says, oh, age verification automatically means you're revealing your identity or people are tracking everything you do online. And I think Ofcom in the UK are saying, no, that's not a problem. They're working closely with the Information Commissioner. But actually, I think what's really interesting is Australia, which is in the middle of nowhere, let's face it. It's a long way away from the US market and all the rest of it. This is going to be the first government-sponsored independent evaluation of all the options. And they are looking at not just like what my members do, which is age verification, but they're looking at, does an app store solution work? Does an operating system solution work? So please look out for that report because I think it's going to be really significant.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. That's great. So now we've got the context. I'd like to turn to all of you who have joined us today with a couple of questions. We've got 2 poll questions that we'd like to share just to get a feeling for how prepared everyone is. So you've just seen the poll pop up on the screen. 2 questions. Just pick whichever one applies best to you. What stage are you at in getting in age assurance implementation? I expect that we're going to see there's a little bit of a range on the call today. And we're also asking how important is privacy for you when choosing an age verification or age assurance, we might say, solution. So please feel free to you just have a quick read and pick out your 2 answers, and we'll just give you a few more seconds to complete that before we move on to our presentations of the technologies. Yeah, you know what? I can't see how many people have answered, so I will leave it to my colleague to call that. Okay, we've got some results. So we're the bulk of us here are exploring strategies or technologies. We do have a quarter saying they're compliant or in the final stages right now, so that's fantastic. In Ofcom's recent presentation on understanding their guidance, they essentially said you should be started. There was a lot more to it than that, but that is, I think, a fair way to present the gist of that. On privacy front, we see a very high priority. The most common answer among both questions, privacy is one of our top priorities. And the second most popular answer on privacy, it's more important than everything else. So we're going to be talking more about privacy, and we're going to be seeing how these solutions work. So at this point, I'd like to call in Liudis Kanapienis, who is the co-founder and CEO of Ondato. Ondato is a KYC-related compliance management platform, allowing organizations to onboard legal and natural entities using real-time biometric video and photo identification methods. Ondato provides compliance, case management, behavior prediction, and age assurance. Thank you for joining us, Liudis.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for the nice presentation. Maybe I'll start sharing my screen, and because a bit of to show, let's say, the solutions that we came with. Just the history behind that is, to be honest, very simple. Yeah, so we work with the KYC softwares, and of course, like we do a lot with the recognition of people basically who are accessing some kind of content or trying to open the account and so on and so on. So we took the approach to it basically when this started actually earlier than the this boom started, and when the Ofcom started this. So we took the approach that just to replace the user experience absolutely the same as the user would come to any kind of other store. Yeah. So basically when in Europe, an example, when buying alcohol, in the US as well, like, you are asked for some kind of document or whatever, and basically everybody is trying to ensure that you are eligible to do so. And we took the fully European approach to this, so that if it's obviously the person that is above like the certain age, basically then they're not asked to do something else. So I'll start playing the video, and I will just explain what is happening. Yeah, so basically, when the new visitor comes to the site, so we're asking actually to show the face, and if the person is above the certain age, which we can just literally set it in, he's just allowed to go to the website, and that's it. Yeah. So and just here to make a note as well, and so any kind of data that is being processed anyway is not stored anyway. Yeah, so it's just being processed. Algorithm analyzes the face and basically only sets the fact that it's above the certain age, and basically just logs in that fact. Yeah, so if the algorithm is not sure that this is the age group that is eligible to get the services, so then the user has like two options, basically either to leave the page or to show the document and to prove that this is the group of age that he's allowed to get into. And then like again, here to note, so that any kind of data of the images or anything of the document and everything is not stored. So just the algorithm, what does it do? So it just compares the face then with the face on the document, and of course reads the document itself, so that, okay, this is the birth date, and basically that person is still in the age group that it is allowed to use the service, and then of course raises all the data. But what we can do with that, so then still to give the token to that device and to that fingerprint, and basically to allow to create a PIN code for the next sessions, like for whatever type of period of time. Usually it's either like 1 day for that day's logins or something, or 30 days if that's more like frequently used website. And then of course, after repeating login to the same website with the same like device fingerprint, IP address, and all those kind of things, they just simply enter the PIN code, and they're then allowed to that website. So simple as that. The approach is basically then still knowing that this is the person that is using the service, and of course that this person is eligible to do that. So thank you. Of course, any questions, I will be happy to answer that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Liudis. That's a very good, great starting point there. I like how the facial age estimation is alluded to. which we're going to turn to Geraint to talk about from Daon in just a minute. But you can see there the tokenization of the photo ID verification data or of the result that's obtained from the photo ID verification data is what's stored, not the photo ID,
Exactly.
not the face, etc. So there, that refers to the privacy protections.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much, Ludus. That was great. At this point, I would like to turn to Geraint from Daon. Daon is a digital identity trust company enabling market-leading organizations worldwide to easily and accurately proof, verify, authenticate, and secure customer identities across the entire customer life cycle. And following Ludus's presentation on ID verification or photo ID verification, Geraint was going to show us a little bit more about facial age estimation. Geraint,
thanks very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much indeed. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Fantastic. So you're going to see something similar to the earlier piece. I'm just going to give you a flick through. So just a bit about Daon. Above and beyond that, well-established biometric provider. We believe in identity continuity, so from cradle to grave. So that's where you onboard, you enroll, and then you recognize the returning customer. And we are available globally, securing, as you can see, billions of different identities all the time. We believe in that sort of process of having access to a platform that brings the orchestration, the plugins, the face and voice biometrics, different types of authentication capability and deepfake capability, excuse me, so that you can actually tailor your risk. Okay, so key and critical is that we can build the level of assurance that you actually need for whatever journey. In this case, we're talking about age, but we also overlay it with other factors which help you to protect from potential, fraud injection attacks or the wrong face going into it, which adds an extra layer of assurance when dealing with the right person declaring their age. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you can see that I've got a store that's kind of needing an age check. I'm going to go through the process. In this particular case, the age estimation is set up for anybody that needs to look over 25. We'll go through that normal sort of selfie check mechanism. God help you all, you're going to see me again. Okay. A quick sort of photo demonstration of the selfie capture, and you can see immediately the age estimation has been given. Okay, so immediately you can see that that's 54 years old, God help me, and that would have passed most people's age criteria for access to age-restricted goods as well as media content online and some of the things which the Online Safety Act focuses on. Just one final thing, I think you've just seen it there. But if you were to have a look at the bottom channel, that age estimation could then be used likewise to step up and to take somebody through a kind of like an extended process. And that can also be overlaid with other fraud prevention sort of technologies such as face liveness and a whole series of capability around injection and other capabilities, plus linking out to data which can confirm a number of the other methods talked about. There we go. Back to you, Chris.
Fantastic. That's great, Geraint. That's a really good point too about the layering, also referred to by Ludus earlier. As we can see, these technologies surely can be implemented in isolation. That is probably not what we're going to see. Not what Ofcom is sort of encouraging at this point. So let's move on and look at another one of these important technologies, MNO checks. For an explanation of how that works in a presentation, we're going to turn to Henry Howe, Mobile Intelligence Product Manager at JT Group, associated with Jersey Telecom. Some of you will be more familiar with that name. JT Group is a full-service global connectivity and business enterprise provider offering the full range of communication services and solutions. So Henry, thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving us an overview so far. So I think you probably, as Chris mentioned, We're Jersey Telecom, so you're probably wondering why we're involved in this space. And we have a fairly long history of one of the first to market, I believe, in this space, being able to use mobile data attributes. So think of along the lines of things like SIM swap, call forwarding, call live call detection. And really, because the mobile operators are lucky to have a wealth of information, age verification is very much an extension of that service. So if you think about when you go through and you procure a contract from the mobile operator, there's obviously a level of credit checks and age verification that happens at that point in time of you taking the contract out. So the mobile operators are well placed to potentially provide another layer, as you mentioned earlier on, in this service. So we've developed this with the mobile operators in the UK. And I wasn't brave enough to do a live demo, but it's provided by a live API via our web services. So very simply put, we can give you a simple REST API to use. The input to that is the phone number. And as a result of that phone number, we can then check that with the mobile operators to say, what information do you have on that number? Are they age verified? And effectively saying, is somebody over the age of 18, which is the important bit that can be scaled up to 20 if you wanted it to, but for the purposes of this discussion, we'll start at 18. So again, it's super easy to implement in the web services. In terms of the latency, can be done in 1.5 seconds. So again, it's from a user customer experience perspective, it's really straightforward for me to implement my number. This could be paired with other information. You could potentially send a one-time SMS password to that number, or you could do a number verification check, which is a way to silently authenticate someone in the background on that mobile number. But the assurance is that we can cover roughly around, we think it's estimated about 65% of the market for the UK in terms of who has a mobile phone pay monthly. So it's not the whole show, but it's a very qualified subset of that base. And there's probably, I'm expecting some questions around what if it's a child account from the parent as well. And the operators have implemented a set of flags on those data points to say this number is not the primary account holder. And unless they have information on it, then that would effectively fail that verification check that's coming through. So just to sort of a wrap up, I'm conscious of time here. The user experience is to log onto the website. They can implement their phone number, either receive an SMS or allow the silent verification check to happen in the background. The information that comes back in the API provides a context on, are they age verified in the operator? Do they have the content lock enabled? So do they have adult content disabled by default? Or alternatively, if it is a parent account, a couple of the operators do enable to know whether a parental control level has been set on that response as well. So you could take that as an inference that because the parental control has been set, they would fail, which is quite an important element to it. So all in all, simple web services keyed off of a phone number to provide in real time someone's age verification check. And again, like the previous examples, you could cache that as a token or whatever you wanted to be able to do to replicate that over a certain period of time and then renew it as you need to.
Fantastic. Thank you, Henry. So we can see, again, a theme emerging here that data is taken and used. It does not have to be stored, though, to complete the check. It just has to be verified. And then the token is created showing that the check has been done. And also, Henry, I appreciate that you made clear the extent to which it's not just the phone number as a persistent entity in or token of it in its own right. It is the combination of all these different data points that are also associated with that phone number, right?
Yes, that's correct. So I think having that as the important element to start off with, and obviously it's about user experience. So the quicker somebody can not have a disrupted journey to access particular content, then that's the companies can show there's a level of assurance, there's a level of checks that have happened, and be confident that the person they're allowing through is that person indeed. As you say, it's very complementary of a layering data set that may go well with the other information that we've seen today.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you, Henry. And Henry will be sticking around as well to join the discussion. We've got a few questions rolling in, so thank you to those who have asked questions already. Before we turn to those, I would like to turn to Lucidity CPO Dan Johnson. Lucidity is a UK certified digital identity platform that offers a range of privacy preserving technologies designed to safeguard data, minimize or anonymize shared information and keep data under the ownership and control of users. So thank you for joining us today, Dan.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Chris, for that wonderful introduction. We at Lucidity specialize in proving that the person that you're interacting with is who they claim to be. And the technologies that we employ include age estimation, open banking, mobile network operator data, and full identity verification, including scanning government-issued identity documents. And this proof can also be used to verify that a person is above or below a certain age without disclosing their actual age or their date of birth. And as a certified digital identity and attribute trust framework organization, or DIATA for short, age proofs issued by Lucidity can be relied upon as a valid proof of age for compliance with the UK Online Safety Act for access to gaming and gambling sites and age-restricted sites, including those advertising or selling alcohol or adult material. Now, what we've observed is that in many age verification use cases, especially online, individuals require a quick, convenient, and privacy-preserving solution, and they're not always comfortable with presenting their face or documents to their webcams. Users want the option of remaining anonymous, and Lucidity enables individuals to take the results of age estimation, open banking, mobile network operator data, or document scanning and encapsulate that digitally, which can be used time and time again to verify age. And this is often referred to as a reusable digital identity. What we're seeing here is a person accessing a website that requires proof of age. They scan a QR code on their mobile device, confirm that they wish to share that they are over 18 and are permitted to access the service. No personally identifiable information was shared with the website, and yet the website can trust that the information provided through our network is accurate and valid. The whole process takes less than 10 seconds. And in addition, we created reusable age tokens, and these operate a little bit like browser cookies. Once you've proven your age on one site, that token can be used on every other site that requires proof of age with no additional interaction required from the user. And these age tokens can be set to expire, requiring another proof of age to be shared according to the requirements of the individual websites. And of course, you can find out more about our products and services on our website at lucidity.co.uk. Chris, back to you, and thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. That was how you check age with digital identity services. So that's one of our 4 presentations for today. Digital identity services, you just saw. MNO data was just before that. We've had facial age estimation, and we've had photo ID verification. There are 3 other methods that are included, mentioned in the guidance as potentially highly effective. And I'm just going to make an executive call here and describe them all in as quick a manner as I can. Essentially, email, credit card checks, and open banking all rely on the persistence of data over time and signals, intelligence signals about how reliable that data can tell you someone's age. How reliably that data can tell you someone's age. So for instance, my credit card, my public email account, and indeed my main bank account are all tightly associated with my identity, and all of them can show that I am old enough to buy alcohol anywhere in the world. So I'll ask Alan if there's any key point that we should chime in on or add to that quick description.
No, I think that covers it, Chris. All good. Yeah.
Perfect. So again, we've got 7 different options there that have all been being considered by the regulator that is sort of furthest along. We're going to have more information from other jurisdictions, starting with Australia fairly soon this year. And so with all of that in mind, I'd like to open things up for discussion. We've got one question asked about essentially things like sex toys, the material that are purchased in sex shops, which people are not allowed to enter. For instance, in Canada, children can't even go into the shop, but these things can be purchased online or widely available online. A good point. Yeah, and so our one attendee asks if this sort of content will be age restricted as well. And I think my sense is that the answer is that will depend from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and that there is likely to be at least some discussion about restricting access to that sort of content. But to the point that Ian was making earlier, a lot of this is just in the process of getting worked out. So anyone have anything to add on that topic?
If you don't mind, I can add a bit of as well. So
Yeah.
quite recently, we issued also the report on the regulations in different jurisdictions of the age estimation, basically the requirements for different goods and services, and basically in different jurisdictions. So it can be still found on our website at ondato.com, and basically then just to take a look at that. At least from what we know at the moment. Yeah. So, but exactly what was mentioned at the very beginning, that it's just a start. Anyway, there's lots of things that are happening now in the world, in the different jurisdictions. There's lots of discussions. There's lots of different acts that are being taken into the force, or in US, waiting for some court decisions. So that for sure will change very quickly in the nearest future.
Absolutely, a good point, and good to be aware of the resources that are available, especially as things are changing so quickly, right?
Exactly.
Chris.
Yes.
Just to add that, if you have a look at age-restricted and general restricted goods, there's a crossover between the physical and the online.
Good point.
And so, if you have a look at the jurisdictions that kind of look at the different type of already age-restricted goods, ranging from tobacco, alcohol, medicines, whatever else, we would actually just see that jurisdiction on jurisdiction, this just becomes another one of the items that are on the list. And so therefore, the technologies that you see here and you talk about just have to adapt to the age thresholds that are there. And then as you start to think about the earlier age access, there's obviously that crossover between the risk appetite of the organization, the regulation and the compliance, and then the technology that can enable it. So we would always see that the need for adaptive technology is critical in that regard.
Yeah, good point, Geraint. Thank you for that. That's and all of these technologies are, at least in principle, adaptive in exactly this kind of way, right? So this is something that the technology should be flexible enough to handle. It's just a matter of working out the policy side of things, really. We've got another question here. Geraint used the phrase "cradle to the grave" earlier, and so one of our attendees asks, how does the database know the person is in the grave? What is the possibility of misuse of a deceased person's gadget for however long the gadget or app allows? Geraint, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Well, I've got a couple of different ways in which you can have a look at this, right? So from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, there are access points to mortality databases. So you can start to have a look. So the UK would have HALO and GRO as kind of access points where you could do that cross-referencing. Obviously, you have to be very, very certain that the person is the same as the name on the databases. So there has to be a check there. I mean, from our particular point of view, we also use biometrics to check that the person being presented is the same as. So if it's a different face that's being represented to the service, we would always be able to flag that. So that partially answers the question, and then the mortality aspects reinforce that. I would say that reliance on biometric that's held on a phone, right, especially shared devices and everything else, is one of the kind of risks to the whole thing. So you need to have that independence to make sure it's an individual record and an authenticator within that. And we advocate that, which then provides that extra assurance as well. Does that make sense?
That
And
makes good sense to me. Yeah. Would anyone else like to chime in on that
yeah,
one?
just to add a bit on this. So basically, like today's technologies, what was like showed today, anyway, in the background when estimating the check, of course, are doing the liveness checks as well. Yeah. So because there's not only that risk, it's also like the deepfake risks, all those kind of things. So those checks are being done in the background anyway. And then, of course, ensuring that this is like just a real live person entering the service, and that's also one of the things why we chose that type of technology, to ensure the age estimation and age verification.
Absolutely. And so you can see how in the different technologies that we've discussed and had presented today, you have liveness detection, you have the age restrictions that are on devices that Henry mentioned earlier. So there is a layer essentially built into all of these things. Same with digital identity services. There's got to be a way to keep track of whether users are still users and still the same users, right? So that another good question. I'd like to turn to one specifically about someone concerned about compliance. Right now, the only age restrictive service we have is potentially advertisements for alcohol. And notes also that they're quite rare. Would we require a more advanced age verification? So if I understand this question correctly, it is, does the regulation apply to me as an operator of a site that offers advertisements for alcohol? My understanding is that the UK's Online Safety Act does not require you to be imposing age assurance checks at this time. But I would also like to call on backup from one of my fellow panelists here. Is that a correct interpretation?
I'll suggest that under the Online Safety Act, one of the categories is age-appropriate experiences for children online, and looking at images of alcohol is not a healthy or age-appropriate experience for people under the age of 18. And so an interpretation of that is that advertisements of alcohol would be covered under the Online Safety Act, and so would then require age gating before getting into it. And I think the same, going back to the earlier question as well about sex toys,
right.
I think would be the same thing, that's not really an age appropriate experience for a child.
No, it might require an account sign up, I guess, in that regard to take an eye on it. So once you sign up to an account, if you can prove you're 18, that will add a flag, and then you can unlock the content to go through. Very much like on the mobile side, when you've got the content appropriate flag, if you can remove that with your vendor, then that allows you to access it online.
Yeah, good points, gentlemen. That's thank you for steering me back onto course there. And I think I think what Ofcom would say is, if you have any uncertainty, you should reach out. They were very keen in their recent workshop that they did to stress that those operating mobile online services that reach out for guidance on making sure that they are compliant are not triggering an enforcement process by doing so. So if you have any uncertainty about that, reach out to Ofcom, reach out to the regulator. That's the way you get the best answer. Certainly do not take my word as any authoritative position on the matter. But yeah, a good question. And so you can see there's a lot of material, online material covered here. It's not just pornography. It's not just, sales of weapons or something like that. So moving along, we have a question specific to Lucidity's method. If I understand correctly, the results of a government ID or facial scan are saved, and the result itself is shared with a service provider. So I'm not, that's more like what's happening to me in the first two cases rather than the digital identity check. But it says, so Lucidity guarantee the ID is genuine, the face is not of an older individual than the user, for example. So really, I guess we have a question about the binding process that establishes the digital identity. Can you speak a little bit to that, please, Dan?
Yeah, of course. So we start with well, we can start with age estimation and store that as a digital identity. So obviously that's a very low assurance digital identity, but we can store that information and then use that proof. The same with then overlaying that with mobile network operator data or a government issued identity document. And in the case of the ID documents, yes, we do validate that that's a real and genuine document. And then we match the image of the person on the document to a live selfie. So everybody else also does live selfies to make sure that the person is a genuine person, not holding up an image or a 3D mask or some other spoofing capability. Bind the two together to make sure that the person presenting the document is the person to whom that document relates.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. We have another question here about European regulations. Which of these 7 methods comply with the European Data Protection Board statement? Now, I am not going to make bolds to try and answer that, and I would caution, I guess, that any answer is not coming from the European Data Protection Board, and so therefore should you always should go back to the regulator. But does anyone have any thoughts on that or an opinion about?
So maybe I can kick it off, like
Please, Louis.
so basically what we have to understand, so I believe that in all of those presented solutions, anyway, in general the data protection itself is like the first topic that is being solved, because otherwise it's just impossible for that solution to work and to be presented to the market. And I saw that there's also the other question, like on how ensuring that the data is not being stored, or also something like that. So what we have to understand, so that in data protection acts in Europe, in US, they require certain actions to be made and how that is being ensured. And that is being described within the contracts from the merchant and the solution provider. And that's described very, very strictly on the one hand. On the other hand, just the risk is too high not to comply with those regulations. And I don't believe that there's any of the solution providers presented today that would take that risk. And of course, then if to move that discussion, of course, further, to share all the data with the data processing agreements, all those kind of parts, then compliance people would understand how it is being shaped. But there's no other way on doing that, and we have to understand that.
Yep, that makes good sense. Anyone else want to weigh in on that one before we move on? Good. Well, that is a good starting point. So, yeah, I mean, these things are also, I think, fluid, is kind of what I would like to point out. So you have to start with the principles, but the privacy preservation aspect is obviously coming up repeatedly here, and I think that, to Leodis's point, that is the sort of primary consideration in the solution development process as well, right?
So exactly, because it starts anyway with the data protection itself. So and because that's the ultimate risk, basically, from the consumers, from the users as well, and that's the questions they are raising first, especially in the cases when we ask to show some kind of sensitive data, like their face or the document or something like that. Of course, in some of the cases, that can be done in the background. Maybe they are not giving those questions, but the regulator is giving those questions then even more strictly, so and that's even not the case that any of the companies would be taking that risk.
Absolutely.
Chris, Chris,
Yes.
there's a couple of extra just things to put in. So different jurisdictions will have access to different data sources that can confirm it, and the coverage rate, which would drive the experience. And then the other thing is the threat of not knowing who that data belongs to. So Ludus has just kind of talked about this in real clear detail. You've got to, with a child or with kind of like somebody who's specifically over age, you've got to make sure they are the owner of the documents, and that's or the data, and that's where you critically can't just rely on data points. You need to know who's in control of them, which obviously is enabled by the massive of regulation, with a really specific way of delivering that privacy and data protection. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Geraint. That's a good point too. Let's move on to to a question specific to the UK regulation. The UK has implemented IDV checks requiring 2 forms of ID to purchase knives online to prove people are 18 or older. If the individual chooses to purchase from an overseas online supplier, will they be able to get around these checks? My understanding, again, speaking, to my limited understanding or imperfect understanding of the regulation as it is written, if you are operating your online service in the UK, the rules apply to you, right? Everyone, we're all in
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move along then. Thank you again to everyone who's asked questions. We've got a number of questions, so we'll get to them, as many of them as we can here. So this question essentially says that the providers are stating that the data is not stored once the age has been verified. And this attendee has had a quick look at the website privacy policies, and they say that third parties and cookies are used. Another provider shares PI with police if its customer, which is not the individual, instructs it to. What proof more than saying trust us is there that third parties do not get access to the personal info, biometrics, etc.?
I can start with that if you want. So basically,
Please.
so as I mentioned before, so like all of that part is anyway described in the data processing agreement within the supplier and the merchant. But of course, on the websites, if you're looking at let's say our website, so of course we also have some cookies and all that kind of stuff, because it's a public website being used like for our possible customers and that part. So that's not associated with the versions that we have basically issued for our customers that are usually white labeled or anyways sometimes even hides within just their interfaces. So so it's a bit of we have to just separate those things. So but it's not about the kind of just trusting us or something like that. It's fully described first of all within the contracts and then within the regulation. So there's a 2 sides of push on how that data actually has to be managed and exactly with whom it can be shared, how and what has to be then erased, what can be used, and then so on and so on.
It's probably worth. Sorry, go ahead.
Dan. Go on, Dan. You first, man.
Thanks. It's probably worth saying that we're all DATA certified companies as well. So the Digital Identity and Attribute Trust Framework, which probably does, if we're honest, need a slightly snappier title to it. But there's an enormous amount of processes that go to complying and registering with that service. So and that includes how we store the data. So we have to be compliant with the UK General Data Protection Regulation, need to be ISO 27001 compliant, and a whole bunch of other additional certifications that are then bundled up into that DATF listing and certification. So that's where you get the assurance that the way that we're processing data is appropriate and privacy preserving and compliant.
Geraint?
Well said, Dan. I think you're picking up on what I was about to say, so that's great. But just the other echo I'd say is that all of us supply to more than one use case. So some of them might have different other regulatory requirements, such as anti-money laundering or similar, where you have to have a body of evidence. So within that sort of contract that Ludus was talking about, that'll be for very specific purposes. What you'll see in our technology block is different treatments to different things for different use cases and demands. So as an example, deleting immediately the PII, which is available, or holding it for a period of time, should that be part of the relying party's own processes to comply with their own wider regulation. And we're talking outside age here specifically for that example. Make sense?
Absolutely. And yeah, and I think just to broaden from the DIATF, that trust framework is essentially saying trust us, the regulator, or the certifying body, right? So it's not just trust the provider, it's trust that's been verified by this other entity. And that is a model that we are seeing elsewhere as well. This is in fact tied in with the research that's happening in Australia that Ian was referring to earlier, that is going to, or at least it is suggested that is going to contribute to the formulation of a similar kind of system there. And I think we're going to see that sort of model replicated elsewhere as well. So that's part of the reason that the regulations are important. We've got a number of other questions here, but almost out of time. So let's try and do a couple more really quickly. Okay, we've got a question about email age estimation. Since email providers are not collecting as much information as a mobile network provider when signing up for an account, how does email age estimation work? Would anyone like to give that a little bit more detail than I gave it in my 5-second pass earlier?
I can help a little bit.
Thanks.
Actually, no, Geraint, you go first this time.
Okay, so at a very, very high level, if you see an email being used in over a period of time related to age-approved use cases, so content consumption or whatever else, and there is an associated trust in the type of transaction that has been made to reach that, then that could be used as a proxy signal for assuming that the person has done it before over a period of time, has been accepted into age relevant services, so therefore has that level of confidence they still maintain that. I would argue personally that always needs to understand who is actually in control of that email. And actually then understand in more detail about the actual consumption of the service that led to that association. Dan, I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
Just that the domain of the email address can sometimes help as well. So if you're registered with a domain that provides that where you would need to be over the age of 18 in order to get that domain, then the association with that person and that email address can be used to verify the age. Yeah, I have my opinions on the efficacy of that, but that's how it works.
Well, and crucially, these methods were pointed out as being potentially highly effective, which implies potentially not highly effective enough, right? So if you don't implement it, the appropriate technology in the appropriate way for the appropriate use case, then you may not have the level of assurance that you need, and you may be using a technology that could work, but it's not in that specific case, right? Ludus, did you want to chime in on that one?
Basically, maybe like I'll try to be short. Yeah. So like Dan and Jared like really mentioned the good points, and I totally agree that it's I wouldn't trust that, let's say, as the proper method, to be honest, like on proving the age. Yeah. So usually like companies are using that as an additional method because it's not the same way as the like telcos do that. Yeah. So it's totally different story, because how does it work? It just collects the data points in the different data sources like social medias and all that kind of stuff, and some attributes related to that, and then compares that with the total outcome. Yeah, so like imagine that you feed different type of data from different sources, from social media, so like whatever e-commerce sites and everything associated with that email address, and then basically seeing if all that gives the same result, like on the let's say age associated with that email address. Yeah, but honestly, yeah, there are two concerns. Yeah, so first of all, who is in control of that email, and then secondly, of course, I can with today's technology, I can create lots of data points actually around any kind of email and spread it around in the internet, and basically that will give the answer that I'm at the same age as Gerard, you know.
Yeah, that's important to know the details and you know and question the claims as a business implementing this technology. You've got to get it right, and there are certainly, as you can hear, there are some differences of opinion about you know, or at least some opinions that there are some ways that you could try that will not work out necessarily the way you hope. Let's hit one more question here. Yeah, and we've got a couple of questions being answered just with typed answers, so that's great. Thank you, gentlemen. We've got a question about where compliance liability falls if an underage user is able to fraudulently create a verified age token, for example, using an older sibling's ID. Yeah, so if you're an online service provider and you have implemented age assurance and something goes wrong, where does compliance, where does liability fall? My understanding is that liability, that the responsibility of the site is to implement age assurance that is reasonably expected to work well, right? In other words, that that some room for potential problems is allowed. But I'm not, again, I'm not representing Ofcom and don't have the Online Safety Act beside me right now. So does anybody want to add to that or correct it?
I'll say that the liability challenge is always gnarly when you get into the detail of it. The answer, of course, as with many things with the legislation, is it depends. So if, as an organization, you have implemented highly effective age assurance, then that is your statutory excuse, and you can stand by it. If the identity service provider has done everything that they need to do and followed all of the rules in order to match the person to their identity document, or has used age verification that has been approved for use, age estimation been approved for use, then that's their statutory excuse, and they're then good. So the liability kind of shifts down the chain depending on whether everybody has done everything that they're supposed to do and were contracted to do as part of that age estimation. It's probably fair to say, as with all of these things, they're never infallible.
Right.
But you know, what we need to do is to show that we have done everything that we would be reasonably expected to do in order to verify that a person is above the age of consent.
Perfect. Let's go to Henry for the last word on this.
I just saw there was a question on the mobile operator checks, and it kind of links in, Dan, with what you were saying around what happens if somebody gets hold of a phone that's, you know, provided to them by their parents, for argument's sake. And with the mobile operators, when you're opening up a new contract, and that's something we importantly said, you know, this is for pay monthly customers. I, as the account holder, will be credit checked. I will have a flag on my account to say I am the primary account holder. Now, if I get a second phone out and provide that to my daughter, as part of those checks, if that number gets queried, the flag will come back and say, no, not age verified. So that would be your sort of control mechanism to make sure that that loophole would not be exploited. But as you say, you know, it's just one of those things where we wouldn't be able to provide necessarily the pay-as-you-go information because they're kind of not checked. But for the payment monthly, the contract benefit is that, you know, you can authenticate as a user quickly and efficiently into the different services.
And another good point. Thanks, Henry. And then another one that builds on a theme that we've had today, that the specifics matter, right? The specifics matter of what, so in this case, what kind of account holder you are dealing with. We have a few questions that we've not been able to get to, but I would encourage all of you who have questions that were unanswered, who have questions that are just occurring to you now or going to occur to you in 5 minutes, reach out to JT Group, reach out to Ondato, reach out to Daon, reach out to Lucidity, reach out to Goode Intelligence. There is a lot of expertise and knowledge and experience in this area that can be brought to bear. And as things are changing quickly and evolving, all businesses looking to comply should take advantage of the resources available to them. So I want to thank all of you who joined today. Thank you, Jarind. Thank you, Leodis. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Alan. And thank you, Henry. Thanks to all of you who joined listened along, and asked questions. We'll be back soon to talk more about the opportunities in biometrics and digital identity. And until then, stay safe and have fun.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys. Thanks.